Upamanyu's Sivabhaktavilasam is one of the ancient Sanskrit texts that the Maharishi often quoted or referred to when describing the lives of the 63 Nayanar saints. It is well known how the reading of the Periapuranam, the Tamiḻ rendering of these stories, awoke within the heart of the boy Venkataraman, the sleeping giant of spiritual awareness. This culminated in his permanent realization of the self in 1896. The stories of Siva bhaktas, narrated in greater detail in the Sivabhaktavilasam, remained a storehouse of inspiration from which the Sage of Arunachala readily gathered nourishment to appease the spiritual hunger of his devotees. Abraham of the Old Testament was told by God to sacrifice his only son in the same manner that a sacrificial lamb would have been offered. Following the Lord's command, Abraham bound the boy, placed him on a heap of firewood, and raised his arm to plunge a dagger into his chest when an angel of the Most High stopped him. In the case of Dabhra, this same command from God was taken a step further, yet Dabhra didn't flinch. The following story is from the New English translation of the Sivabhaktavilasam that will soon be published by Sri Ramanasramam. Narapasiniman ahami tadayan parasivau dhanau vithunute pakan. 32. For thou dost cut off the egos of human beings, steep in ignorance, season them and make them over to Siva for food. 40 verses in praise of Sri Ramana by Ganapati Muni. The story of Dabhra. Sri Agastya, once in Kailasa, Parvati curiously inquired of Lord Parameshwara, who was resting with his head placed in her lap, Lord, tell me, if you please, who is your favorite among Nandi, Bhringi and Chandi? Pasupati, the Lord of Beings, combing through her locks with his high fingers, replied, more than anyone else, including you, Dabhra Bhakta pleases me the most. I must say, I cannot bless him enough. Shocked at this revelation, Uma demanded an explanation. Siva got up, smeared his body with ashes, tied his matted locks into the familiar kaparda, and said, follow me and see for yourself. He proceeded to Arunaranyam. Meanwhile, in his own town, Dabhra was preparing to feed Maheshwara, devotees of Siva, as it was the auspicious day of Bharani in the month of Chaitra. As no devotees approached him for food, he went out to find them. At this instant, Siva appeared as a Bhairava, staunch Siva Bhakta, at his house and cried aloud, is it Dabhra's house? Can I get some food here? Chandana, the maidservant, came out and reverentially replied, please come in. The master of the house will be here soon. The response was, we do not enter a house when the master is away. I shall take leave. At this, Sweta Vananayika, the wife of Dabhra Bhakta, rushed to the door and pleaded with him to stay. Repeating the same words as before, he added, we shall rest in the Ganapatiswara temple. Shortly after, Dabhra returned, despondent at not finding any Maheshwara to feed. His wife narrated to him what had happened in his absence and asked him to bring the devotee who shone like Siva from the nearby temple. Hearing these words, which were like nectar, Dabhra sped to the temple and found the Bhairava seated in Virasana beneath the Kovidara fig tree. His left elbow was supported by Yogadanda, the yogi's staff. Brahma Kapala, the skull which served as the begging bowl, was by his right hand, which was engaged in counting the sacred beads. A small pouch full of the sacred ashes, wreathed by a chain of Rudraktas, lay before him. His effulgence outshone the sunlight itself. The great yogi looked aged, rugged, and somewhat tired. Dabhra fell at his feet and clasped them tightly. The Bhairava, with a considerate glance, inquired, "Who is it?" Charmed by the inquiry, Dabhra replied, "Though I consider myself a slave of the devotees, people call me Dabhra Bhakta. I take refuge in you. Bless my home with the dust of your feet and partake of the food we serve." The Bhairava rejoined, "Your fame is spreading to regions afar. You are a symbol of the adage, charity begins at home. Today is Chaitra Bharani, a day as auspicious as Mother Girija herself. What a great fortune is it to be served dinner by a true devotee. Nevertheless, I need to caution you about a certain matter that might sound unpleasant. Well, let me not cause distress to your household. I shall approach another." So saying, he rose to leave Dabhra's dialogue with the Bhairava. Sri Agastya. As the Bhairava stood up, Dabhra held fast to his feet and, trying to stop him, pleaded, "Have no doubt, my lord. Try me. By your grace, I shall be able to meet your requirements." The Lord interrupted, saying, Wait. I do not eat the regular items like milk, curds, ghee, rice, vegetables, etc. Even fruits plucked from the celestial kalpa tree do not suit me. Now listen to my food habits. I eat only once in 6 months, and that is flesh. Surely it is beyond your scope. Dabhra quickly replied, "We have young animals at home. Tell me your choice." The Bhairava paused a while and said, "Well, what I consume is human flesh, that of a 5 or 6-year-old boy, the only child of his parents, faultless and perfect in body and in all respects. While the mother holds him fast in her lap, the father should chop him to pieces, both without the least sorrow in heart. After the father washes the meat free of hair, nails, and bones, the mother should mince and cook it happily, using spices and condiments. Such food I relish and nothing else. Now hasten to your wife and obtain her wholehearted approval." The liberation of Dabhra. Dabhra, relieved to hear the consent of the guest, rushed to his house. He calmly approached his anxiously waiting wife and, placing his arm around her, explained at length the codes and subtleties of Saiva Dharma, the practice of service to devotees. Somewhat perplexed at the unsolicited explanation, she remarked to him, "Lord, what is all this preamble for? Do not my actions reflect your mind? Do not make me feel ashamed. Speak out what is on your mind." At this, Dabhra pulled himself together and narrated the Bhairava's requirements. Sweta closed her eyes in contemplation of the Lord and replied, "If that is Lord's will, go and bring our darling son, whose life we shall consecrate to the Lord himself." Dabhra sped like the wind to the Gurukula school, where the boy Shripati was presently meditating on the Panchaktari. At the arrival of his father, Shripati was prompted by his guru to recite a hymn on Umapati. Its import was, "Siva alone is worthy of worship. Siva bhaktas are worthy of service ever." Immensely pleased with his rendering, overflowing with feeling, the Guru blessed him with long life and prosperity. Dabhra, obtaining permission from the Guru, brought the boy home and handed him over to his mother. Sweta bathed the boy in perfumed lukewarm water, dried him with a towel, and holding him in her lap, beckoned to her husband. Dabhra brought with him a sharp knife and cautioned his wife, "Do not let your heart give in to pity, lest this offering should be soiled." He watched the boy for the last time, shining with fresh stripes of the sacred ashes. Unperturbed, he chopped asunder the boy at his neck in one stroke. "Shiva, Shiva!" The boy's head flung to a distance from the mother's lap. Wasting no time, the blood was collected into a vessel, the trunk cut into pieces, and the edible parts carefully removed and washed. Dabhra handed the minced meat to his wife, who dressed it with select spices such as cloves, pepper, coriander, cardamom, fenugreek, white mustard, asafoetida, and cooked it in fresh butter. As the head portion was unsuitable for cooking, it was laid aside, which was preserved by the handmaid Chandana. Then Sweta informed her husband that food was ready and the Bhairava should be brought without delay. Dabhra ran again to the temple and informed the Bhairava, who was sitting in contemplation in the same spot. At this, the Bhairava rose majestically in his awe-inspiring grandeur, enthusiastically drawing handfuls of ashes from the pouch. He smeared them all over himself. He held the kapalam, the skull bowl, in one hand and with the other played his damaru, handheld drum, which echoed terrifically throughout the land. He had a waistband of skulls that rubbed against one another when moving. His thick silver tresses were tightly tied into a crown of jatamukutam, held fast by a garland of smaller skulls. His forehead, smeared with red gorochana, seemed like the fiery third eye, while his two eyes spread terror as well as compassion. As he walked with the support of Dabhra, his oversized anklets tinkled, manifesting the primeval nada, cosmic vibration. Once they reached his house, Dabhra made the old Bhairava sit and wash his feet in a golden plate and accorded him ceremonial worship. Later, placing two broad banana leaves before him, the lady of the house, Sweta, served the cooked meat in a separate bowl and rice on the leaves. When she sprinkled the ghee on the rice in the traditional manner, Dabhra handed him a vessel of fragrant, sweetened water. The Bhairava examined the contents of the leaf plate and remarked, "I can see that you have omitted cooking the head." While the couple looked at each other anxiously, the maid Chandana appeared there with a bowl and said, "Expecting this, I cooked the head portion separately." Feeling greatly relieved, the couple requested the extraordinary guest, "Revered one, what is sought by you is served to you. Eat to your heart's content." Then the Bhairava rejoined, "Do not rush me. I never eat without company." At this, Dabhra went out for a second guest and returned without finding one. When the Bhairava suggested that Dabhra himself could accompany him, he replied, "It is a practice for me to wait on the guest while serving him." On being pressed further, he sat beside the guest. As they were about to start, the elderly guest remarked, "Normally, the parents feed their children first and even take delight to sacrifice their own meal for their sake. Now, fetch your son at once and let him eat with us." In reply to these agonizing words, Dabhra said, "He is not available anymore, so kindly proceed with the fare before the food turns cold." Nevertheless, the Bhairava ordered him to call his son by name. Dabhra, still remaining calm, made his wife to do so. Then Sweta, controlling herself from choking with emotion, went out and shouted, "Sripati, my darling son, come at once, will you?" Lo, his call wrought a miracle. As if appearing from nowhere, Sripati tottered towards her and threw himself in her arms. She could not believe her eyes. Could this boy be someone else? She kissed him. His body smelled like all those spices she had dressed him with. She stopped to reason, but then left her mind bare in gratitude to the Lord of the inscrutable ways. The boy asked her innocently, "Mother, why did he go from your lap?" She pressed him to her heart and replied, "Nowhere, dear." To find out the cause for the delay, Dabhra came out and was dumbstruck at the sight. He shared the embrace of his son with his wife. When they went inside, they saw no trace of the Bhairava or the food items. Then the Lord appeared there with all his paraphernalia. Celestials rained sweet-scented flowers, and the quarters resounded with the resonating sounds of their instruments. The blessed family praised the Lord in unison. The all-compassionate Parameswara blessed them with Sarupya Mukti. He also blessed their kith and kin and the maid servant too.